about to play some Sonic Mania.
During the course of the investigation, LS told so many stories, trying to wriggle out of all charges. Even detectives had a hard time keeping up with them all. They would literally change from conversation to conversation. Initial disappearance story. In her testimony, Harley Hunt told the jury that LS had given her 3 versions of his disappearance. Gannon was at a friend's house, Gannon was missing, and Gannon was with a friend's older brother. The candle incident and fire story. This is part of her make Gannon look bad strategy. There was a fire downstairs, and LS wakes up Lena, asking her if she hears the alarm system calling out fire. She then packs Lena in the car, who apparently has their 2 dogs, then goes back inside, downstairs to get Gannon, then drives around the block. Harley was at work at the time. LS tried to lay the groundwork to show Gannon as a bad kid. The fire, bath salts, therapy. He stopped taking his meds. Swisher sweets were found in his bag. He bled at the drop of a hat. He had nosebleeds and would bite his fingers and bleed all the time. She even said that Gannon picked the burns he was suffering from after the fire, to the point that his arms would bleed. He pooped constantly, lit the candle himself that caused the fire because allegedly his room smelled of poop. All of this is so disturbing for too many reasons. When Harley got home from work, LS told her that she had called her fireman friend to come and check that everything was okay. False alibi and surveillance footage. LS provided an alibi that she was shopping during the time Gannon went missing. However, surveillance footage from the day did not support her alibi, further complicating her credibility. Social media posts and search efforts. LS portrayed herself as a concerned stepmother, actively participating in search efforts and posting about Gannon's disappearance on social media. However, her behaviour and statements often appeared inconsistent with a genuinely concerned individual. Transported to another state. In a particularly puzzling turn, LS suggested that she had sent Gannon to another state for a visit, and she claimed that he was alive and well. Law enforcement did not find any evidence to substantiate that claim. The man in the cape. The final story from LS was that her killer alter, Maria Sanchez, also known as the Protector, had killed Gannon. Maria thought Gannon was a man in a cape who she thought was her stepdad, who was actually Gannon, standing on Gannon's bed, wielding a knife, and that's why she shot him. Maria also claims to have enlisted 8-year-old Lena to help her move Gannon's body. Various other abduction stories. These stories would vary wildly, with the names of the people constantly changing, but most of them involved Gannon being abducted by these people and LS always as the victim. Eduardo, the carpet fixer. She gives some random Mexican guy access to the house through the garage code. He comes in to fix the carpet. She is upstairs with noise-cancelling headphones on, working out or something, and she hears a loud bang, goes downstairs. In one account, Gannon's door is closed. In another account, it's open. She sees Eduardo, who smells like paint, alcohol, and fresh tomatoes. He has scars on his face, a tattoo on his arm, wearing a tool belt and pink boots. You can't make this shit up. Well, apparently you can. He attacks LS. sexually assaults her twice, bangs her head on the floor, she loses consciousness. Before leaving, Eduardo demanded a suitcase and some boxes and then leaves with Gannon. In a phone call with Al, she said that Eduardo was still in the house when the police came and that she thought Gannon might be hiding somewhere. At some point, Gannon jumped on Eduardo's back to fight him off. Quincy Brown is downstairs. So Eduardo becomes Quincy Brown, and he's in several stories, but here he does everything that Eduardo did except for his ID falling out of his pocket and onto the floor, which LS, while being tied up at the time, was able to read. She later provided a photo of Quincy Brown that Al says she Googled. It was a police mugshot. He was on the most wanted list for sex offences and, according to the FBI, had been in Mexico for the last 2 years. Uncle Matt. Uncle Matt now replaces Quincy Brown, but don't worry, he features again in other places. Gannon high-fives Uncle Matt and they both leave together. Craigslist guy. LS drove up to Douglas County after finding a bike advertised in Craigslist. In a phone call to Detective Amber Cronin, LS claims this was her initial intention and reason for driving up to Douglas County. Gannon test rode the bike, crashed, suffered a horrible head injury, and the Craigslist guy, who was now Quincy Brown, takes Gannon. Hike story. In later interviews, LS changed her story, stating that she and Gannon had gone on a hike in a remote area. Gannon wanted to see a castle. She claimed that Gannon got into an argument with a man and never returned from the hike. On a phone call with Al, LS slips up here. She said it was dark and mountainy, and then quickly corrects herself and says, well, not dark because it was daytime. We know that LS returned to this area at night to dispose of Gannon's body when it would have been dark. Bike accident. She told Al on the phone that Quincy Brown abducted Gannon near Highway 105 and County Line Road after Gannon fell off his bike and hit his head. She claimed a man named Terrence was in the car with Brown. This is 50 miles away from their home. What is Gannon doing on his bike 50 miles away? Fake accident. LS was driving down the road and Quincy Brown was lying on the street. LS stopped the car. Brown then got up, jumped into her vehicle, forced her to drive home, where he raped her and took Gannon. Cash belly woman. A woman who looked 8 months pregnant got into LS's car and starts pulling money out of her belly. She wanted LS to go into the Mexican restaurants and give them a package as part of a money laundering scheme. It's Al's fault. Edgar. This time, it's Al's fault. In an interview, LS claimed that Al owed Edgar money, which led to Gannon's disappearance, and she believed Al should be prosecuted for manslaughter. She couldn't give specifics. According to LS, however, she had been covering for others, hoping that the full truth that's not sugar-coated would come out. Oh, as opposed to shit-coated. She went on to say that Al had given her a story to tell the police, and that he could pull strings if she didn't snitch. She added that she wouldn't reveal the true identity of Edgar because he has dangerous affiliations. She also added that her stories were convoluted and inconsistent only because she lost track of what her husband wanted her to say. Angel. When LS was arrested and interviewed by FBI agent Grusing, She requested a private room to talk with no camera. She then told Grusing another story in this private room where the abductor is now a woman called Angel. She was involved in some threesome story. She also referred to Angel as the babysitter, and apparently she looked a lot like herself. Let's blame Landon. The most cruel of all blame shifting is when LS brings Landon into her stories. According to LS, Landon had taken Gannon to Mexico. Someone is following me. LS claimed to have been followed by the Craigslist guy in a blue car. On a phone call to Al, this blue car becomes a red car, which Al called her out on. This story also has a variation where somebody called Michael the Archangel. That's not me, that is LS. She said Michael the Archangel was following her in a black car. And finally, the cartels. So the cartels were somehow involved with Gannon's disappearance. On January the 19th, 2021, a mental health evaluation submitted to the court stated that LS is competent to stand trial, and LS represents herself in court on March the 5th, 2021. Her divorce from Al was finalised in April of the same year. On May the 3rd, the court announced through release of documents that LS will no longer be representing herself and will get new public defenders. She later changed her plea from not guilty to not guilty by reason of insanity. The following year, 2022, but was evaluated as competent to stand trial, which would begin on March the 20th, 2023, with jury selection. Opening statements took place on April the 3rd, 2023. Prosecutors claimed LS killed Gannon in January 2020 because she was very resentful towards his biological parents, especially his mother. They have suggested she was unhappy in her marriage and resentful of being treated like an unpaid babysitter. People online have also suggested that Gannon had witnessed something he shouldn't have seen, like LS having an affair, for example. District Attorney Michael Allen, in his opening statement, said, "She took Gannon's bloodied and broken body and the blankets and pillows that were with him and shoved them into a suitcase." Allen argued that the steps that she took to cover up her actions are proof that she knew what she did was wrong and was therefore sane. She cleaned up blood in Gannon's bedroom, moving his body to various locations to hide it before disposing of it like garbage in a river that flows into the Gulf of Mexico in hopes it would never be found, he said. Prosecutors said evidence presented during the trial will show that LS took deliberate steps to hide what she had done and told the jury that she was the last person to see him alive. The prosecution said she admitted that in a call to authorities where she reported the boy missing, a recording of which played for the jury in court. "Who was the last person to see him? I guess it was me," she could be heard saying in the recording. LS also lied to investigators various times to try to hamper their investigation, Allen said, changing her accounts of what happened to Gannon. She claimed 2 different men had raped her and then abducted Gannon, and later that one of those men had taken Gannon after he hurt himself in a bike crash. All of her actions were purposefully designed by her to distance herself from what she did, Allen said. LS started the trial by sitting in the corner on the far left of the courtroom as you're looking into the room, but people, including members of the jury, began noticing that LS was giving the finger to witnesses, so the judge ordered that she sit between her attorneys where he could keep an eye on her, after admonishing her for doing so. On the 9th day of the trial, Harley Hunt took the stand as a witness for the prosecution, and much of what she testified corroborated LS's lies. Recalling the events on the day of Gannon's death, Harley talked about the conflicting stories provided by LS. She told the jury that LS had given her 3 stories on the day of his disappearance. It was at this early stage LS was already suggesting that they are trying to frame me. Notably, LS had a history of lying to Harley and everyone else, including fabricating details about her father's death. Harley had always believed, because of what LS had told her, that her father died in a robbery gone wrong, when actually he died from a fentanyl and hydrocodone overdose, the same substance found in Gannon's system in the autopsy. At the end of Harley's testimony, she was clearly distressed, and while she was on the stand crying her heart out, LS was seen laughing in court with her attorneys. This was her own flesh and blood on the stand, and she just couldn't give a fuck about her own daughter's emotional state. But then what does one expect from a narcissistic mother? Dr. Christine Moore, mental health expert and clinical psychologist, explained that LS, according to her own accounts of anxiety, should have displayed loss of memory at times while being incarcerated, but she didn't. Dr. Jackie Grimmett also evaluated LS and corroborated what Dr. Moore had said. She went on to explain how DID works, that it is a very destructive disorder. It's not a party like it was with LS. Moreover, LS's history did not support this. After hearing LS say that she had created certain personalities, Dr. Grimmett stressed that you do not create an alter. They present themselves to you, including their name. Grimmett told the court how LS claimed to have a button in her cell, which, when pressed, could summon 2 vampires, Jasper and Justice. Grimmett was familiar with the movie series Twilight and recognized the characters from this film. She also stated that it is hard to believe that somebody can be impacted with this disorder and people around them don't see something wrong. Family or someone close would notice time loss. Although switching between alters can be subtle and perhaps not so noticeable, but something would be noticed at some time. But I think the only switching LS did was with cars. There was no documentation whatsoever about any DID activities leading up to the crime, and then between the crime and changing her plea to insanity, suddenly her DID activities increased off the charts. This is not how DID works. LS's stories and claims of mental illness, insanity, psychosis, DID are not consistent with what close family members have said. LS's brother, Dakota, her daughter Harley, and her stepdaughter Lena. In tests, LS exceeded the cutoff for feigning. That is, she exaggerated her symptoms. However, she did display traits of borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. LS also talked to the psychologists about the belief that Gannon could be brought back to life. At one point in the evaluation, LS was asked to draw 11:10, or 10 past 11, on a clock as part of a brain damage test. This is significant because LS performed this test twice, once with Dr. Laundra Torres and the other with Dr. Dorothy Lewis for the defense. Her first depiction of the clock was perfect. Assistant Principal at Mountain Ridge Middle School, Leslie Hicks, told the court about her dealings as an employer with LS. One of LS's references was not kosher. LS had given a name, a number, but when Hicks called this number, the caller ID told her it was Eugene Stauch. LS was asked for another number, and when she finally got through to someone, a woman answered with kids in the background. The emails written to LS to the school were all signed as Dr. Stauch. On the day of Gannon's murder, when LS texted Hicks with her excuse for not coming into work, that her stepdad had an accident and had just died, even though this had happened years ago, Hicks messaged her back, asking for clarification as to whether she was coming into work or not, and LA replied, "He is my parent. I cannot believe that would not be an assumption at a time like this." Hicks then wrote back with, "Sorry for your loss, but I do not make assumptions. I need clarification so that I can find cover for the classes for today." Spencer Wilson, reporter with CBS 4, also testified about the interview he took of LS when Gannon was initially reported as a runaway. He had asked LS if she had something she wanted to tell Gannon. The world watched that video, but what people didn't know was what LS did behind the scenes. She replied on camera to that question, but she wasn't happy with the result and asked Wilson if she could have another take. What was chilling was the 180-degree turnaround of her demeanor. It was completely different. She also referred to Gannon in the past tense in this interview. What is also chilling is that there is a good chance that Gannon was already in the suitcase, in the van that can be seen in the background of that recording. Her last message for Gannon was, "I hope I get an apology from everyone who thought I was guilty of something."
I'm just ready for Gannon to come home. Most importantly, for him to see his family. But second, I am going to be so ecstatic when I'm able to say to people that I hope they have a really sincere apology for all these theories that have came out online, for all the things they said that I have done or people have done. And I just want everyone to know that we're going to find Gannon. And I love him so much. I've helped taking care of him for so long.
Any message for Gannon?
The message for Gannon I have is, Gannon, when you get here, you'll be able to truly tell what happened. And then I really hope I get a sincere apology from everyone who has made all those things, especially from my husband. We just wanted to add a message to Gannon from my family, is that we love you and miss you. And we hope that you come home soon. And Gannon, I can't wait till you can come home and let everyone know that you're okay. We love you.
During the time that the medical examiners were on the stand, the suitcase was brought into the court for the jury to see. However, Because it would have had fluid on it from being stored in the freezer since it was found, they put it in a plastic bag and took it out again of the courtroom very quickly so it wouldn't stink out the courtroom. All of the items recovered from the suitcase, including Gannon's clothings, were covered in decomposition fluid, so they brought photos instead of the items due to the smell. Peter Vigil, an El Paso County detective, testified that he smelled bleach when he entered Gannon's bedroom and that he found what appeared to be a bloodstain on Gannon's mattress. FBI agent Andrew Cohen, the FBI's lead agent on the Stauch case, testified that investigators placed a wiretap on Ellis's phone in the weeks after Gannon was reported missing. Jurors heard 4 wiretap recordings, all of which were phone calls between LS and someone from the website fakepolygraph.com. The first 2 calls placed by LS were asking why she had yet to receive the results of the fake polygraph exam in her email. And in the third call, the representative told LS that her fake polygraph had been blocked by management due to the questions pertaining to, quote, potential illegal activities, unquote. Some of the questions LS tried to have answered via the fake polygraph, according to the arrest affidavit, included: did you participate in any way in causing your stepson's death? And did you participate in any way in causing harm to your stepson? After more than 4 weeks of testimony, El Paso County prosecutors called their final witness, Kevin Clark, on Monday, May the 1st. Clark, a former crime analyst for Colorado Springs Police and the current director of crime strategies and intelligence for the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office, spent the entire day on the witness stand, the majority of which was spent reviewing the prosecution's timeline of events. However, the most significant portion of testimony came at the end of the day, when Clark reviewed numerous Google searches made from Ellis's phone before her arrest. District Attorney Michael Allen pointed out that Defense Attorney Will Cook and LS had been looking at the Google searches on a laptop and laughing during much of that testimony. "I don't know what's so funny over here, Judge," Allen said to Judge Gregory Werner, referring to Cook and LS laughing at the defense table. Many of these searches were made publicly available in LS's arrest affidavit from 2020. Clark also went over an extensive alleged timeline of events from the investigation, starting with the day before Gannon was reported missing, January the 26th, 2020, and ending with the day Gannon's body was found in Florida, March the 17th, 2020. The timeline acted as a summary of the prosecution's case against LS and the significant facts presented up to this point in the trial. The timeline begins with LS discussing with family members how Gannon wasn't feeling well and how he accidentally burnt himself with a candle the night before she killed her stepson. Clark described in vivid detail all communication LS had before detectives took her phone on January the 29th. During this time frame, Al's text messages begin to show suspicion of his then-wife, accusing her of not telling the full truth in the early evening of January the 28th. Clark alleged that LS picked up Gannon's body from the Douglas County location on January the 30th and then left with it in a rented van on February the 1st and finally dumped it over a bridge in Florida on February the 4th. Clark also testified that LS tried to buy a second fake polygraph after her first was denied by fakepolygraph.com. Clark testified that a list of questions such as, "Did you murder your stepson?" were found in LS's Notes app on her phone under the title, "Telling the Truth." Attorneys for LS, who has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, countered the prosecution by claiming she suffered a major psychotic crack as a result of childhood trauma when she killed Gannon. Defense attorney Will Cook said the gruesome details highlighted by Allen, including how Gannon was killed and the lack of a motive, are proof that LS was insane because it all does not make sense. These are all signs and evidence of a mind, a soul, that is broken in a most fundamental and profound way, he said. Cook suggested LS developed dissociative identity disorder, because this is what her defense kept calling it, as a result of being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused by her absent mother's string of partners during her childhood, sometimes sleeping in a car in the driveway to escape the abuse. When she killed Gannon, she was not, in her mind, killing her stepson, but the demons from her childhood and life. Based on surveys given to potential jurors, many were skeptical of LS's mental health defense, Cook said. He urged jurors to put aside their impulse to make someone pay for such a brutal killing and keep an open mind, because the judicial system requires LS to be presumed innocent. "I'm not telling you to like it. I'm just telling you that's the way it is," he said. The defense's main witness, Dr. Dorothy Lewis, author of the book Guilty by Reason of Insanity, and featured in an HBO documentary titled Crazy Not Insane, got off to a bad start when she met LS the day before her testimony and had a 3-hour meeting with her. Prosecution got wind of this, and before the jury was brought into the courtroom, objected to the judge and requested that none of the contents of this meeting was to be brought up by Lewis during her testimony, because they had not received any information about what was discussed during this 3-hour meeting, and that she was to submit all documents in her possession relating to the defendant to the prosecution. They also posed the question, why did Dr. Lewis feel the need to meet with LS the day before her testimony when she has already submitted her evaluation? The meeting in question was not recorded. Judge Werner informed Dr. Lewis that she can only talk about what she has submitted in her report, and if there was any additional information or evidence, she is not to talk about it in her testimony until it has been cleared and entered by the court. She was also ordered not to mention a softball incident that resulted in an accident, because she had not referred to this at all in her reports as part of her opinion. Dr. Lewis, who is one of the world's leading experts in DID, concluded that LS suffered from dissociative identity disorder and was not sane at the time Gannon was killed. Prosecutors, however, pointed out that Lewis didn't even know how sanity is defined under Colorado law. When asked by Young, she couldn't recite the insanity law in Colorado. It was Dr. Lewis who asked LS to perform the clock test again, but this time LS muddled it, suggesting that she had learned to make mistakes and how to demonstrate her insanity. Prosecutor Dave Young, in a potential attempt to damage Lewis's credibility in the eyes of the jury and show a lack of knowledge of the case, grilled Lewis on LS's actions before and after Gannon's death. Young asked after each piece of information whether Lewis knew LS had done the action being referred to, such as hiding Gannon's body in the trunk of her car at the airport, and if she had the capacity to understand right from wrong at that time. Lewis responded to the majority of these lines of questioning with, she wasn't sure or didn't know. Lewis complained at several points during her testimony that she was unable to conduct an MRI and an EEG on LS, something she claims she needed in order to make a decision. However, it came out during the trial that it was actually Dr. Lewis who withdrew the request for an MRI or an EEG from the court. The prosecution also opted to play 5 different video clips of Lewis's interview with LS, conducted over several days in November 2022, that show LS flipping between her alleged personalities while speaking with Lewis. In the first 2 videos, LS can be heard discussing some of her alleged personalities with Lewis, saying that her personality, Jasmine, would sometimes take over and go on trips around the world to places like Dubai. Immediately following the first video, Prosecutor Young confirmed with Lewis that LS had never been to Dubai. In the third video clip, LS transforms into one of her alleged personalities, which is the first evidence of her doing so in trial. LS in the video claims she is Taylor and informs Lewis that she can't speak to the Maria personality, who LS claims in several different interviews was the one responsible for killing Gannon. She claimed that Maria will only come out if there is a triggering event. In the 4th and 5th videos played to the jury, LS can be seen donning a foreign accent. Lewis testified she believed it was a Russian accent, even though she can't speak any Russian. Lewis, stating she is Maria Sanchez, and says that she was the personality who shot Gannon, saying she saw a man in a black cape enter the basement of her home and shot him out of fear, then realized later it was Gannon. You don't understand. I had to protect the people in the home, LS said to Lewis while claiming to be Maria. I'm trained to kill, LS said at least 5 times during the interview.
I did not know, didn't have a safety. I didn't know any of that, but that's what I do. I'm trained to do that, okay? You're trained to kill, okay? I'm trained to kill. That's what I do. I'm trained to kill. I'm trained to kill. That's what I do. Trained to kill, okay? That's what I do. Kill for a living, okay? Anyone that tries to hurt me, I'm trained to kill, okay? That hurts anyone or no. That hurts the people that I care about. Okay, so yes.
LS also told Lewis that she has numerous personalities with names like Harmony, Jasmine, Taylor, and Maria. To me, or to whoever I was, it was a man in the cape. That was the only reason the gun went off. I was not okay. I would never hurt anyone on purpose. In the interview, conducted in March 2022, LS told the psychologist that she had become very paranoid in the days leading up to Gannon's death. LS said she believed she was being followed by someone in a black car, and that she also believed a man named Michael the Archangel was following her. She also told the psychologist that she couldn't remember large chunks of the day that Gannon was reported missing, and that at one point she ended up naked in her garage and didn't remember how she got there. Lewis said she gave the most peculiar descriptions of what happened to Gannon. For example, Eduardo comes in and rapes her and takes Gannon. Then there's this Quincy guy who is a paedophile. There were numerous mindless descriptions of what might have happened to Gannon, but she is not a stupid girl, yet she makes up the darndest stories. Lewis believes that LS doesn't even know what happened. Another proof of insanity, according to Lewis, was the fact that LS was observed by personnel to be talking to somebody who wasn't there in the jail cell. Lewis believed this was genuine because she didn't know she was being watched. Is it really possible for someone with as much experience as her to be so naive? Or was Dr. Lewis so desperate to have one last stab at a sensational DID case? Throughout the brilliant cross-examination by Prosecutor Young, she hung onto her diagnosis for dear life, but it appears that she has lost all objectivity when it comes to DID. Even when prodded to give a reason as to why she believes somebody has DID, she couldn't give a direct medical answer. She would say things like, "You can see it." LS described her Maria personality as her Spanish and Russian-speaking protector after being prompted by Dr. Lewis, and claimed that she can speak with Maria. According to Dr. Lewis, Maria was a physically abusive entity. Those are the words of Dr. Lewis, which I find rather surprising. I'm surprised that she's using the term entity and not alter. Lewis also believes that LS suffered brain damage as a result of certain accidents. There was one accident that Dr. Lewis and the defense were not allowed to bring up in testimony because it was not in her final report of the evaluation. Lewis seemed to take LS for her word without even digging into her background. LS told her that she had started seeing her abusive stepfather alive after the candle incident with Gannon, and consequently Lewis believed this was the trigger and stated that LS had episodic psychotic states. In the fifth and final interview, LS, speaking as the killer alter, Maria, continues to take responsibility for Gannon's murder, insists that LS had nothing to do with Gannon's death and that she had no knowledge of dumping his body in Florida. LS, acting as Maria, continued, however, to deny ever stabbing Gannon, only admitting to shooting him. For nearly the entirety of all 5 video clips, which combined were about 2 hours long, LS could be seen at the defendant's table, with her head facing directly down at the table, almost never looking up to watch the videos. At several points during the day, when video of the interviews were being played, LS could be seen putting her hands over her ears. When asked by Young why Maria only came out with her and not the others, Lewis replied,
"Why is it that Dr. Torres," and asked her, "Can I speak to Maria Sanchez?" "Can't change." She says, "I'm not able to change that persona. But when you ask, she's able to change."
Patrick.
Once Lewis completed the interviews with LS, she requested additional examinations in the form of an EEG and MRI. Lewis said she needed these in order to make a decision. She claimed it would have shown the abnormal brain activity that she was certain would be there and would complete her evaluation. On direct examination, the defense attorney, Tolini, asked Lewis, "You were disappointed when I couldn't make that happen, weren't you?" To which Lewis replied, "Yes." It was her understanding that the court declined to pay for the EEG and MRI at this point in her testimony. However, when Young cross-examined her the next day, he produced an email written by Lewis. In this email, Lewis wrote, "Go ahead and withdraw the EEG. I have been reading more on Letecia," again her pronunciation, not mine, "and I think we should drop the request." Young posed the question, "So why did you blame your attorneys yesterday for withdrawing the EEG and making out you didn't know about it?" Her reply was her usual word salad. At times, Young's questioning of Lewis boiled over into nearly hostile territory, with the most heated moments coming during points where Lewis referred to notes that had not been previously entered into evidence. The first example came in the morning, when Lewis informed Young she had a note from one of her interviews that alleged LS liked to be called Maria as a child, but that she forgot to mention this note on Tuesday. Lewis also could not recall how she learned the information contained in the note. Young was visibly unhappy that the note was never entered into evidence, which is required under Colorado law for forensic interviews of defendants, and that this was the first time he was hearing of it. The second instance came in the afternoon, immediately after the lunch break. Before the jury was called in, Young informed the court that he wanted to confirm on the record that a certain piece of paper signed by LS's alter during one of the forensic interviews was lost, and that Lewis would not pull it out mid-testimony like she had done earlier. LS's defense attorney, Josh Tolini, and Lewis confirmed that the document was indeed lost. Judge Werner then asked Lewis if she has any of the other signatures that LS had supposedly made through her alters, and she said no. The jury was then brought in and the trial continued. 20 minutes later, Prosecutor Young asked her what happened to the papers of the signature she got LS to sign under her alter. Dr. Lewis then produces the document and is sitting there on the stand with a bunch of documents on her lap, including the one that was deemed lost just 20 minutes previous. "Did I not say this was going to happen?" Young remarked immediately. After the judge removed the jury from the courtroom, Young and Tolini reviewed the documents Lewis had brought with her and informed the court that the signed document in question was not present, but others were that had not been admitted by the court. Werner ruled that Lewis could not have her file of notes with her for the remainder of her testimony. The judge also told Lewis that everything she has in her file must be submitted to the court. Another point of contention was the manner in which Dr. Lewis conducted her evaluation with LS, and the fact that she had LS's attorney, Tolini, present during the sessions with LS. I wanted them to see what I see, was her reasoning for this. A couple of times during the evaluation, you can actually hear LS's attorney asking LS questions. This is during an evaluation, and her lawyers are asking her questions. Other attorneys have been asked about this. While they say it is not unheard of, it is generally considered bad practice. And this wasn't the only problem Prosecutor Young had regarding her sessions. At one point, he paused the video and asked Lewis, "Who is that person leaving the room?" pointing to a man in the video making his way towards the door. "I don't know, I don't recognize him." "But he's your son. You don't recognize your own son? Why is your son in the evaluation session?" Again, a lot of fumbling and word salad from Dr. Lewis. At the end of this day, Prosecutor Young asked that none of the defense confer with the witness overnight, so that we don't have a repeat of the weekend. The judge tells Lewis that she is not to have any discussions with the attorneys overnight. At one point, the judge had to raise his voice to say stop, and then admonish Lewis for continuing to talk after an objection had been made. During the cross-examination, Young accused Lewis of conducting a sanity examination that was not thorough, of being biased, and that she has a disregard for court rules. Lewis, who is over 80 years old and uses a wheelchair, arrived late to court every day and also did not turn in her sanity report to the court until 4 days before jury selection. Lewis was clearly unhappy with Young's line of questioning and stated numerous times that she stands by the findings of her sanity report and that she doesn't determine sanity for a paycheck.